Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1094B, and today's date is October 6, 2016, and the title of the episode is The U.S. Government is Working on an Endgame Plan Behind Closed Doors. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, since the beginning of this year, Obama came out and said that anyone that doesn't believe the economy is doing well, they're peddling fiction. And it seems that the U.S. government central bankers have spent a lot of time convincing us that the economy is doing well. And there's a new report out there from the Government Accountability Office that found that federal agencies spend about $1 billion each year on advertising and public relations contracts. And we see that the government has also spent an extra $430 million for 5,000 federal public relations employees' salaries. Now, what do they need the PR firms for? Well, think about this for a minute. The government is spending billions of dollars to convince you how good of a job they are doing, how the economy is doing well, to keep you from the truth. So they're using taxpayer money to lie to the public through PR firms. We know the Pentagon right now uses propaganda videos to convince other countries, and this country is also included, that terrorists are evil, terrorists are around us, and terrorists are coming after you. And of course, that's used to put fear in the people. We see Obama has hired many PR firms, individuals, to convince you that everything is fine. We don't need a firm to propagandize us to let us know that the economy is doing well. Because when an economy is doing well, you feel it. You know it. You know because you feel secure in your job. You know because you have extra funds. You know because when you want to find a different job at a higher pay, those jobs exist. You don't hear rumors of layoffs, cuts. You don't hear any of that. You don't have this uneasy feeling that something's wrong in America. The only reason you need a PR firm is to convince you that everything is okay, that the government is doing the right thing. The government is making it better for you. But that's an illusion. That's advertising. That's propaganda. And people are starting to see through this because they realize that there is something wrong. There is something wrong with our country. The economy's not right. Why is there talk of war? Why have we been lied to so many times? And if you really think about it, they've used PR firms for a very long time because think about all the things they've told us. Obamacare is going to be great for you. Is it? The Patriot Act is going to be good for you. Is it? Actually, all these bills that they come out with, they always mean the opposite. It doesn't benefit the people. It benefits the companies, the corporations, the central bank, whoever wrote the bill. It benefits them. It benefits those people who supported the bill, but never the people. So they've been using propaganda for quite a while to convince us they're doing all this for our best interests. Even with the TPP, the TTIP, people are starting to see through the propaganda. They realize through all the leaked information that, no, this is not good for the people. Actually, this is actually terrible for the people. And we can see right now there is a movement around the world. This is the first step. First step is getting the real information, listening to other individuals, doing the research on your own to find out the truth, not listening to the corporate media, not listening to the government and taking everything they say at face value and saying, yes, whatever they say, that's the truth. No, the whole point of the media is to question everything, is to do research and to say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. You're lying to us. You're using propaganda on us. And we can see right now it has already started because the alternative media has grown. More people are listening in. We see protests around the world saying, you know something, we reject the TTIP. We don't want it. That couldn't get traction. We see protests against the central banks. And it is starting very slowly, but there's more that needs to be done. We see out in Yemen. Now we know out in Yemen, the United States government central banks placed a puppet government in there. And the Houthis decided, you know something? We don't want the central bank. We don't want the U.S. government in our country. So the United States had Saudi Arabia bomb Yemen. Yemen never attacked anyone. But we can see that the president of Yemen that was placed in there by the United States government central bankers was kicked out. And the Houthis went to the United Nations and they put in a bid to form their own government, to set up a rival administration. And they wanted to be recognized internationally. And the UN rejected this. But what's very interesting on the UN website, they have the declaration on granting the independence to colonial countries and peoples. And it says, all peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of their right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Inadequacy of political, economic, social, or educational preparedness should never serve as a pretext for delaying independence. So, right on the UN website, it says that people have the right to self-determination. They have the right to form their own government, to say this government is not working for us, and this is what's happening in Yemen, but we can see what is happening. The U.S. government central bankers, they will not have this. They want their puppet government. They will reject any proposal. They will veto it. Just like in all the other countries. Libya wants their own government. They don't want the U.S. telling them what unity government they should have. That's not democracy. That's another government saying this is the government you'll have. Same thing's happening in Lebanon. Same thing's happening in Iraq. And Syria. The people there are saying no. So we can see right now, the central bankers, they're continually trying to push their puppet governments on the people, but the people are fighting back. And we can see right now, through the rejection of the UN, they're not even following their own mandate. Now, yesterday we reported on Iraq and Turkey, where the Iraqi Prime Minister told Turkey, you must leave our country. We did not invite you in. We don't want you here. And if you stay, there's going to be problems. Now, Iraq is a sovereign country. They have every right to say to soldiers that are in their country to get out. But Turkey responded to Iraq. Prime Minister Yildirim said, no, the Turkish troops will remain in the camp in northern Iraq, and we're not leaving. Even though Iraq objects to it, it makes no difference. We are staying. Now, we have the same situation in most of these countries where Turkey, the United States, France, UK, and other nations believe they have the right to go into a country and stay in a country, even if the sovereign government, the elected government, tells them to leave. Can you imagine if this happened here in the United States? If North Korea decided to bring in troops into the United States and said, listen, we're creating a base here. We're going to take over this piece of land. We're going to create a base. We're going to bring in soldiers, military assets. And we don't care what you say. What, you want us to leave? No, we're not leaving. This is what the United States, Turkey, the UK, and the rest are doing in these countries. Why? Because their entire mission is to keep control of the Middle East, and they can care less what the governments say about it. So what that really means is that they violated international laws. They don't care what elected governments have to say, and they are invading these countries, starting a war on purpose. Now, we know out in Syria, the situation is not improving for the United States. We see Syria and Russia, they are just about to take over Aleppo, which means the United States, there'll be no reason for them to stay in Syria, but of course they're not going to leave. And the real reason the U.S. can't separate the moderates from Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra is because there really isn't moderate rebels. There's nothing to separate. They're all one and the same. And when you really look at what is going on in Aleppo, we see the vast majority of Aleppo's remaining 2 million residents live in government-controlled territory, with less than 250,000 trapped in terrorist-held sections of the city. Not only do 1.75 million of Aleppo's 2 million residents live in government-controlled sections of the city, but militant groups held up in districts awaiting liberation are not even entirely made up of Syrians, but rather foreigners who've entered the country. This entirely undermines the West's narrative that Syria is undergoing a civil war, rather than a foreign orchestrated invasion. Because when you really look at the terrorists that are there, that are paid mercenaries, 99.5% are foreigners. They're not even Syrian. And we can see right now the U.S., they can't separate the moderates from terrorists because there are no moderates. The 2007 report clearly explains why the U.S. cannot separate its alleged moderate rebels from Al-Qaeda and its various affiliates like al-Nusra, because there were never any moderate rebels to begin with. In fact, it is clear that when the U.S. was caught supplying weapons to Al-Qaeda, which is now the moderate rebels, they had to make up some type of story to explain this away, and that's when they created the moderate rebels. But really, the moderate rebels are Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, the Islamic State. It's all one and the same. Now, the Syrian government, they have seized around half of the key opposition's held neighborhoods in Aleppo. And they're moving and encircling the terrorists right now. And this is why the United States government central bankers, this is why they're backed into a corner. And we know that the U.S. is going to do whatever it takes to prevent Assad from liberating Aleppo. The U.S.-led coalition bombing runs in Aleppo have killed around 60 civilians in the countryside of Al-Bab area. Heavy air raids launched by the U.S. coalition claimed the lives of 20 people, 3 children, and 40 others. And we can see that the corporate media doesn't report on this because the United States government central bankers and the coalition forces, they're doing whatever it takes to try to keep Aleppo. And it doesn't matter if they hit civilians. They'll only report on what Russia or Syria does. They'll never report on themselves where they're actually killing more civilians than anything else. The terrorist groups that they pay, they fund, they restock with weapons, they are killing more people than anything else. So Assad came out, and they know that it's a matter of days or weeks where they capture Aleppo and they push the terrorist organizations out of this area. They are allowing the terrorists to leave the area. All they have to do is lay down their arms, and they will be given free passage out of Aleppo. They will be given amnesty. Now, he's done this before. And of course, the United States government central bankers, they don't like this at all. Now, will the terrorists do this? Well, most of them are looking at the situation and they realize this is a no-win situation. They better get out now, no matter how much the U.S. government central bankers pay us. But we can see right now, the United States government, well, they're in closed doors meetings right now. They are talking about striking Assad. It's back on the table. And we see that they're going to do this without UN Security Council resolution. And they're looking to bomb Air Force runways with missiles. They're looking to hit infrastructure. One proposed way to get around the White House objections to striking Assad's regime without a UN Security Council resolution would be to carry out the strikes covertly without public acknowledgement. So what they're doing right now is they're trying to figure out a way, behind closed doors, not letting the public know, a way to start a war. Because that's what's going to happen. If they set up some type of no-fly zone, or they bomb Syrian planes on the runway, or they attack the Syrian armed forces, this will be the beginning of World War III. Now, Russia is continually bringing in defense systems into the area. They brought in the S-300. They also have the S-400 air defense in place. And Russia is out there continually warning the United States, do not do this. Do not attack the Syrian government forces. This is an act of war. Under international law, this is an act of war. So what is the U.S. going to do at this time? The U.S. government, I should say, the central bankers, the neocons. Well, they're trying to figure out a way to create a situation where it looks like the United States had to do this because they were either attacked or for some other reason. And this is what this is the end game. This is the plan they're working on right now. Now, Russia has announced that they're going to be keeping the Russian Air Force indefinitely in Syria to maintain control of this area and to stop the United States from removing Assad. Because we see the UN came out with a report and they warned that the terrorist-held area of Aleppo will be completely destroyed, which means that the Syrian armed forces and the Russian forces will remove the terrorists from this area. They said it will be done by Christmas. So this tells us right now that the United States government central bankers, they have from now until Christmas to initiate their plan. Because otherwise, they lose Aleppo. And we can see that they're going to do whatever it takes. If it means war, they will go down that path. They're ready. They're willing. They don't care if they have to send your brother, your cousin, your aunt, your mother, your father, your children to war. Because their children, their families, they're not going. It's everybody else who's going to be fighting for them. And at this point, this is when the people have to say, okay, we are not doing this. And I'm not just saying here in the United States. I'm saying throughout Europe, the United States, Canada, Australia, because it's going to be all of these countries. And we know from the actions of Putin, from every single time that we've been tracking each one of these incidences, that he does not want war. He's been trying to stop it. If he really wanted war, it would have happened already. What would be the point of continually trying to stop it? The United States back in 2013 wanted to come in and bomb Assad. Just step back, let it happen. In Ukraine, they wanted to start war there. Russia could have just come right in with all the military assets, started a war because the United States would have joined in there. Here, Russia continually tried to work with the United States in Syria. They wanted to work together to get rid of the Islamic State. The United States put together a coalition, did not include Russia or China, because their mission was not to get rid of the Islamic State. It was to get rid of Assad. Their mission was to use the Islamic State to get rid of Assad. Russia stepped in continually, time after time after time, tried to work with the United States to work together to get rid of the terrorists, which are really the paid mercenaries that the United States funds, protects, supplies military assets with. So if Russia, Putin, wanted to start a war, it would have been done already. From his actions, they're trying to avoid war. But the neocons, they want war at all costs. They will continually try to get a war. They will not stop. We see already there are additional warnings. This is coming from Fallon. They're no longer using the Islamic State as the terrorist group that will create some type of an event. Now they're falling back on Al-Qaeda once again, because the Islamic State is pretty much beaten. So they're out there saying that Al-Qaeda, well, they are ready to strike the UK and Europe at any moment. New charge of terror is believed to be led by Osama bin Laden's son. I mean, they're pulling out all the stops from the past. They're trying to create a story that will gain traction. Because, remember, we have this window right now. From the UN report, they have until Christmas. So they're going to do whatever they have to do from now until then to try to get the war started, to have some type of an event. Because what we're seeing right now is the entire system, it's falling apart. We can see why the DOJ, the Department of Justice, is putting pressure on Deutsche Bank with this mortgage-backed security fine, because they know they can bring down the system whenever they want. So this might be timed with what's going to happen from now until the end of the year, because we can see that all of this is rapidly deteriorating very, very quickly, and the U.S. government, the neocons, they're backed into a corner. And they might bring down the economy, they might start a war, they might go full throttle on all of this. And we can see that they're not going to stop. They're going to continually push until they start a war. They get a controlled collapse where they can cover it up. They can get laws passed to give more power to the central bank. And we can see this is all being done because the system is at its end game. It cannot be supported anymore. They know this. And it's starting to look like they're getting ready to bring it all down. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.